So let's go all the way back to the first moments when perhaps a young Nicholas was going, I really like this story. I really like storytelling. I like these worlds that I'm getting to escape into. Were there early memories of stories, maybe music or theatre, that really kind of opened your eyes to storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. If everyone has sort of one book that made them fall in love with reading, or made them fall in love with writing, for me that was Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. I read that at sort of 16-ish, and I remember just spending days in this frenzied, claustrophobic world, following a sort of would-be terrorist, and trying to understand, why he wanted to do what he wanted to do. And it was this constant sort of pull and push of making you sympathize with him, then pushing him away, then making you sympathize again. And the claustrophobia of that reading experience still stuck with me. I never felt that sort of power before, to try and understand what it was like, to empathize with somebody who was so heinous, clearly, but to see them in the round.
And thinking of that story today, like if you read that book today, do you feel, or do you think you would feel differently if you read it today, like later in life?
Yeah, it's a good question again. I reread it quite a few times, while writing this book, and it still did have the overpowering impact on me. I think that first time is always going to be the most special. It was the first experience I really had of, stepping into somebody's shoes who was totally, totally unlike me, and that sort of idea that the real power of art and literature, is that it can extend our sympathies to people who are beyond the bounds of our normal lot, and that is a fundamentally moral thing, to try and understand what it's like to be, however heinous a person they might be, somebody who's outside of your circle.
I feel very inadequate right now because I think back to when I was reading at 16, and I don't think it was anything quite as intelligent, if I'm being honest. But was there stuff when you were really little, like when you were being read to, perhaps, that captured your imagination? I mean, it might not have even been books. Perhaps there were films or TV shows that captivated you and your imagination.
Yeah, I mean, I think like most people of my generation, reading the Harry Potter series, obviously the vividness of those worlds was tremendously evocative. So Dickens' Christmas stories were tremendously evocative. So outside of the book realm, the other huge influence, on me, was Pete Doherty's songwriting. I think it showed just the poetry of words, the sheer beauty of it when combined with the melody. It was that experience of the worst sort of heartbreaks, the worst sadness I had. I could inhabit those melodies and those lyrics, and it would take some of the pain away. And that was that first sort of experience of what beautiful words, simple, beautiful words, put
Yeah.
in the right order, could do.
Did music not ever cross your path then as being like a musician to write songs? Because, respectfully, that would have taken you quite some time. You could bash a song out in a couple of hours.
Well, I tried. No, I mean, I've got notebooks and notebooks filled with song lyrics. The terrible shame is I can't sing for shit. And I would love to be able to. I can't do it. It's one thing. There's no barrier I can cross to try and make it happen. I can't hold a tune. So at some point I had to say no, it's not happening. You've got to just stick with the words. So it went to writing.
Because I always find that really fascinating when I get to meet authors or script writers, musicians as well. And there is such a crossover of skill in communicating something with your audience through whatever medium that is. I just always find it fascinating that some people go down the music line, some people find poetry, some people find more long form storytelling in books or film or etc. Was there someone close to you when you were finding your voice as a teenager that helped guide you to find things and uncover things you hadn't considered? Because when you're 16, you're an idiot. Like, frankly, you don't know anything about the world. You've been in school all your life, and it can be really hard to understand what's going on to you, to your immediate circles of people, your immediate society. Was there someone that helped guide you through that?
I mean, I think it was definitely a mix of sort of influences. My parents definitely had a huge inspiration on shaping my exposure to art, definitely, and that came in sort of in terms of being introduced to different films and different books and all. But I think also it was really, seeing my favorite bands, reading The Enemy, reading the interviews assiduously of everything they said, and they would reference like Oscar Wilde, or they would reference Baudelaire or so, and I would go out and buy a copy of that book or that poetry, and I would never have heard of them without them. They might have been name dropping without me actually read the book. Who knows, right? But I remember that with like again the Libertines, with Muse, with Placebo, with Arctic Monkey, Alex Turner would often, I remember him referencing, Nabokov's influence on writing I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor, and songs like that, which you might not, and again, is this true or not? It doesn't matter, because it did get me into, that, and that's such a huge pathway, and it really shows the way the different mediums of art, always sort of crossing over.
I think you might be the first person to ever tell me that whether it's relevant, whether it's true or not, is irrelevant. But I quite like that. I like the fact that it doesn't matter why something exists. If it inspires you to pursue that or to look at something at a different angle, that's all that matters.
I think there's always a certain amount of, sort of myth making with a lot of sort of art. Afterwards, maybe in light of what I'm about to say, take my own comments with a pinch of salt. But I think there's always a sort of element of sort of shaping it then to a certain narrative. Nabokov sort of had this, when people would ask him, what inspired Lolita, one of the greatest books of the 20th century. And he said that he'd read an article in a Parisian newspaper in which an ape in a zoo had been given a crayon and a drawing pad, and had been left with the crayon and the drawing pad, and they came back later, and it had apparently drawn the bars of its own cage, which is a beautiful and he saw this was the inspiration of Lolita, that the bars of the paedophile Humbert Humbert's cage are the young girl he adores. It's an unbelievable metaphor for the book. Everyone tried to trace down this article about this ape. No one could ever really find it. Very, very spurious. Even if this article did exist, was the ape drawing the bars of its own cage, or was it just going like this? I don't know. Does it matter? Does it matter? I think not.
No, it just does make me wonder about all the current literature that's being written in the start of the 21st century. And let's say, 500 years' time, are they going to look back at what we've written and think, does it matter? Is it important? Because I think it all is in the kind of journey of storytelling. We've been telling stories to each other as a species for thousands and thousands of years, and it's taken so many different turns. Only in the last 10 years, really, have we seen things like podcasting taking off and people sharing their stories through that method. This is one of the oldest forms of storytelling there is, other than sitting around a campfire and sharing stories in that sense.